What's up guys, Krieg Shaw here today with a mesh stringing tutorial. So I've been asked by Connor a couple times, and then a lot of my players asked to have the pocket I have. So I wanted to do a stringing tutorial on this specific pocket that I use in my gamer, and I have an Easton Stealth core head with, right now it's a coast to coast wax mesh that I've been testing out for them. So we're going to be stringing a replica of this so you can see it, and I would describe this pocket as kind of a mid to low pocket with about moderate whip. I've been getting less and less the older I get. Granted, I'm only 25. But anyways, this is a pretty nice head. You can channel it really well because you can kind of notice it's a little wider head and it's really stiff, so it's not going to pinch or bend very much. So it allows you to get that nice tight channel in the head without getting too much whip. So we're going to do that today on a black Easton Stealth core head I got with a String King mesh kit. So definitely really enjoying the String King mesh kit, and it comes with multiple colors that you can choose, string options you can choose, as well as backup, an extra sidewall, an extra cross lace, and an extra shooting string. So to start out, I have all my laces lined up so we can make this quick and easy. And when I first use this, I like to break it in, and so I usually just roll it up as such, and then I kind of stretch it out, unroll it, stretch it out, unroll it, and then I go back and forth until I feel it's really nice and stretched out. And I do this because I like it when it's really broken in right from the start. I feel it's a lot easier to string it up and a lot more consistent when you string it up. But that's just personal preference. Like Connor always says in his videos, this is a way, not the way. So anyways, when I string it up, I break it in like I said, and then I start with the 10 diamond row. I go first row over the third row, obviously with the rough side facing towards the ball, or we'll hold the ball, and I go first row over third row, 10 diamond, like that. So with this Easton head, this one has a ton of sidewall holes, as you can kind of see here as I'm holding up. So when I do the top, I start with the second sidewall hole down from the top, and you'll see why as I'm going through this. But I really enjoy a head or in a pocket when it's secure into each side, and so like these two corners you'll see through the sidewall, through the top string, like that's where I start everything, and that's where I'm going. So to start out, then we'll have our cross lace here, or sorry, our top wall here, and so I'm going to put it through this second hole. And I'm going to put it through that first hole in the mesh, just like that. So you go front to back through the mesh hole, and now I'm going to go again one more time through that same hole and come back out through that same mesh hole on here and pull it tight. And so when I pull it tight, I want to make sure that it's nice and secure. I got that mesh hole right over top of it, and I'm going to pull it as tight as I can to get that started. So when I go across, I hit every single diamond, and you can see here it's already stretched out pretty nicely. I hit every single diamond, and I just do the traditional little half hitch and then go back the other way. I'm not a big fan of the triangle top string or any of that. Personal preferences, I think it's just a waste of string, but you can debate it either way, I think. So when I go through this, I'm starting out like we were, and I'm just going to go straight through the plastic, come back around through the front of the mesh, and go back through and create that little half hitch that you'll see there. So we'll pull that tight, and then go back through the other way. So now we're going back through the back of the mesh, pulling through the front, go through the front of the head, and then pull it through that hole that you create right there, and make sure you get that nice and tight. So you can see right there how the mesh is pulled up around the front of the head. So when you do that, make sure you kind of pull it into the back and tighten that down, and so you don't get that inconsistency of the mesh going back and forth up either side. So I'm going to go to the next one. Just go to skip one top hole, go to the next one, go to the very next diamond, do that same half hitch we did in the back, pull that nice and tight up around the back, do that same, reverse it, go back through here, go back through the front of the head, pull it down, pull it tight, and go on to the next one. So now you see we have our full top wall done all the way just to that other side. So you want to make sure that when you tie this up on this side, it's just as tight on this side. And one thing I notice whenever I'm stringing up my players' heads is that they get to this one and it's super loose because they didn't stretch out the mesh, or it's a little tighter or whatever, but it's not the same. And so when I go through this, I look at this first sidewall and you can kind of see that where that top string going in is above the loop around the mesh. So I want to replicate that exact same thing. So I'm going to go through the back of the mesh, pull it through that second sidewall, pull it out, and then do that same exact thing where I'm going back underneath now. So I'm going to try and replicate that exactly and pull it through that same exact sidewall hole. And so you're going to pull that tight and make sure your mesh is all the way up on that sidewall as well, and pull that as tight as you can. I always like to make sure I get a Leatherman or something where I can really tug on it, because you want to make sure it's that same tightness around the whole thing. So one thing I notice with a lot of my players is they do just a single little half hitch knot to pull through these sidewall holes. And the one problem when you get all these sidewall holes like this is a lot of times companies make them a little bigger, and just because that helps if you're doing multiple or whatever you want to do with them. So it just gives you a lot of opportunities. But it also, if you're only doing a single hitch there, it'll pull through after it gets a little too tight or whatever. And so one thing I do with my players is I try to double up that hitch. So I go through it, I do your typical once over like that, and then you just pull it through one more time. And I'll give you a close up here in a sec. I just want to make sure I do it right and get that tightness. And so then what it looks like is you got that right there, where you got that double loop around. Just loop it once through, then loop through the same one. And I like to use a Leatherman or pliers or whatever to grab that loose end, and so I can still hold this with my fingers and then pull it as tight as you can up against the sidewall. So you still have that same consistency or tightness. So then it's like that, and it's the exact same on both sides, symmetric all the way across. So now we're moving on to the next sidewall. As you can see here, I already have one done. And so that's when I finish this first pocket, or when I finish this other sidewall, I can show you exactly how the pocket's going to look. So what we do is we do two types of interlocks. The first one cinches it super tight to the sidewall, so it locks it all along in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. And down here you'll see there's 3 in a row, and I'll explain why. That's kind of where the channel ends and the actual pocket begins. And so especially with this head, it allows you that because you can see it right away how wide the head is. So you can channel really far down that sidewall and still make sure you don't have too much whip with that, especially even with hard mesh or wax mesh or whatever. So then the second part of this is I double up here, and that helps create a little bit of a lower pocket. And I'll grab this quick, and you kind of see how the pocket just sits right down here, but when you go to shoot, then it's kind of moving up a little bit, but not too much room back and forth. So on our second sidewall then, we're going to start in the very first hole. We went second, remember, on the top string. So we're going to come down, if I can hold on to my string here, we're going to come down through the outside, and we're going to go through that same exact hole we did on the top string. And what I like to do, or the reason I do this, is because I think it keeps a nice secure tight fit to that corner, and you're not going to pull down too much or too little with it. So I go through the front of the mesh to the back of the mesh, and I'm going to go through the next one down. Obviously you skip this one with the top string, and come up through that one more time, but come up on the inside of your mesh there. So you're pulling, and so when you actually pull this tight, it's going to really cinch it up tight to the head. And you can see it right there. So it pulls tight, so you can see there what it does is it bites against the mesh, bites against the head, and it'll hold it really securely to the side of your sidewall. So we're going to do that several more times. Go to the next mesh hole, pull it out from the front to the back, and you're going to skip one sidewall hole, go through the mesh hole again, go underneath, so you're pulling that interlock, pull it nice and tight, just like that, cinch back and forth, go to the next mesh hole. Now in this one we're going to skip 2 holes, so you're going to go 1, 2, 3, same interlock, really pull this down, and now you can really start to see your channel forming in the mesh, even just like that. You can kind of see it's starting to already curve down either side. So we're going to do this, skip one more hole, go 1, 2, go through that same one, go underneath, pull that tight, kind of see it right there. It's really starting to pull it tight against the sidewall, create that nice channel. And now this is where we triple up, and this is one of the benefits of having so many different sidewall holes, is that you can do a lot of different things like this, where if you look at something like the Evo 6, where there's only a few still on there, and you have to do things like the stack with like the Mark Matthews pocket does. On this one, it allows you to not have to worry about that. So then when you string it up with this really tight channel still, you don't have those little mesh nubs sticking out from it pinching or from it stacking. And I really like that, because I noticed that a lot with different heads I've strung that don't have a lot of sidewall holes, is you kind of have to make up for that. And so this allows you to still space it out to the point where you're not stacking too many on top of each other doing whatever, but it still allows you to get that nice tight channel, that kind of one on top of the other feel, without it actually being on top of the other. So I go to the very next mesh hole, very next sidewall hole, and I do that lock one more time, cinch it tight to the head, and now I switch it up. And the reason I do this is I think this allows the pocket to get a little more depth, allows it to kind of pull away from the mesh or from the sidewall holes you'll kind of see there. And so in this one now, I go back to front, pull it through, and now I'm going to that very next sidewall hole, flip around on you here, that very next sidewall hole, and I'm going to go outside inside and just kind of pull it through. You'll be able to see it right there, just like that. And so you'll pull through and it'll be able to hold that mesh up against there. And this doesn't rub very much either. I can go through quite a bit of time without replacing sidewalls or anything like that, and it doesn't rub on the mesh or the sidewall. So you're doing pretty well in terms of upkeep with it. So you got 3, 1, 2, 3, right after the other there. So we're going to go to the next mesh hole. You're going to skip one sidewall hole. And so this is where it starts to create that mid kind of low pocket where you can carry that ball, stick straight up and down just like you're taught. Go the next mesh hole, go to the very next sidewall hole. We're not going to skip. You're going to double up kind of here. And so one thing that can happen with this is you see right there how the mesh has gotten below the string. And so to keep from that happen, when you tighten it, go below that mesh and kind of pull it up with it, so you're able to really still get that tightness but keep that mesh in between the knots. So you're going to go to the next mesh hole. Now you're going to skip a hole, and this is what brings that pocket down just a little bit lower as well, just like that. And you're going to do it one last time in the very next sidewall hole, just like this. Boom. Now tighten that up. And then lock it off, you just go to the very last sidewall hole. Works out perfectly. And you're able to pull it through the outside, and just like we did on up here and everywhere else, do that double hitch around the side. 1, 2. And then just make sure you pull that super tight to the sidewall, just like as before. So now what you see, obviously we don't have that bottom string, but you can see how that pocket's starting to form. You can see that on the bottom half, it kind of raises up away from the stick, and you're able to kind of take full advantage of the depth of that pocket by having these mesh holes having this mesh be able to pull as much way. And I really never have a problem with it bagging out or being illegal or anything like that. And so I'll just pull this super tight up against the bottom of the throat here, and you can even see it already on this one, is that it's all the way tight down there, and you still have that hold. And I have a ball right here, so you still get a pretty solid depth in your pocket, and this is just barely legal, which is kind of the way I like to play with it. Get as much as you can without having to be illegal. So, and you can see the full pocket here. You have your channel, kind of goes all the way down here to either side. Maybe it's a little easier, yeah, from the back, and you kind of see where it comes out and has that natural channel up to where your shooting strings are. And so for the shooting strings with this, I just go 3 straight across. I might change this one so it's just 2 straight across, try and follow that NCAA rule that went in this year, which is the 4 inches or whatever. But that's how we do the string itself. So when you do the bottom string, I'm just going to do this, show you here, but I'm pretty OCD, so I want to make sure it's tight and looks pretty on either side. So I use the outside 2 holes of either mesh or of either sidewall. So I'm going to go in this one outside, go to the very next 10 diamond row, just kind of the normal way everyone does it, and I'm going to weave it through, start on the very far outside, and just weave it back and forth through this as we're going across. Come back in the other side, so you can kind of see it there, how it's woven back and forth just like normal. And you're going to come in this far outside, so you're skipping those inside 2 holes, pull it, make sure they're even, or if you don't care, then just tie them off. I'll pull this tight to the sidewall, but not too tight, just enough to where you kind of see this is bunched up right there. I'll just push out just a little bit so I can still have that ball sit as low as possible in my pocket when it's there. So then I'll just tie a little figure 8 around those, and we'll be good to go to start doing the shooting strings. Alright, so now we have the head all done, ready to go. We're going to add in the shooting string. So I always like to do 1 cross lace and 2 shooters, or like now I'll probably just do 1 cross lace and 1 shooter, kind of see how that NCAA thing's working out. So when I do this, I'm a big advocate of locking down your shooting strings to your sidewall, whether it's through a sidewall hole or around the entire sidewall. Either way, I just like a lot less moving parts, and I think it helps a lot more with consistency. So on this one, I go to the first open sidewall hole. So if you have to count, it's the 4th one down on the sidewall, and it'll actually be the very next 10 diamond row on your mesh. So you can kind of see right there. And so I'll pull this through, I'll make sure they're even, and I just do a very simple crossover, or weaving them back and forth. So we're going to do the very next 10 diamond. You strung the top on that one, so you're going to string your first shooter on this one and your second shooter in that one. So we're going to just weave that through, back and forth through here as such. And so I just keep it simple, keeps it consistent. So when I do this, I kind of do it the slow way. I know some people just like to weave them both at the same time. I do one at a time just because I like to keep them very symmetrical, very fluid, just I guess for appearance's sake. So on the second one then, I'm just going to weave it around, and I go to the right. As you're looking at the back of your stick, I go to the right and in, and to the left and up, or and out. So the right and in through that hole, and to the left and back out towards the back of the head. And I'll weave that just like that, back and forth the whole way. And so when you get to the end here then, you got to interlock it back around the sidewall. So this is the last one. I'll go back through the mesh, and I'll go up through the sidewall hole and pull it around. So now you have it sitting like that. And so I just do a simple 2 overhands. I get to the tightness I want. I do 2 overhand knots, and then I kind of do a figure 8 with the both of them. I'll show you that here in a sec. So you got your 2 overhands, and so I'll just do a quick figure 8 to really lock it in. But then it looks like that, and you got 1 across the top with 2 overhands and a figure 8 just for now to hold it in there. And especially with these tend to come loose a little bit more, so now you can have that playing. So now on to the next shooting string. We're going to go white, mix things up a little bit, and so for this one obviously it's going to be hard to fit this through the sidewall hole, so we're just going to wrap it around. You'll go over this sidewall brace just on the other side through the next 10 diamond as we showed you, and pull it through just like that, and then weave it. And just as before, I weave it 1 at a time. Might be a little slower, but as I mentioned, I like to keep things symmetric. And so one thing I really like to do is to keep these shooting strings flat, and I'll show you that here in a second. So I'm going to weave this one through back and forth across the whole length of the stick, or width of the stick, hold it in tight. So now you have 1 through there just like that. So when I go through the second one, I'll kind of stand up to show you here, I'm going to go to the inside just like that. When I pull it, I want to make sure that this side that's up is going to be up the whole width of the stick. So then when I come back through on this side, I'm going to do the same exact thing. I'll pull it just a little bit to get started. I want to make sure that that's not going to curl over or anything like that. And I just think maybe for appearances, but if nothing else, then it's nice and smooth the whole way and consistent. So I do that the whole way across, lock it around the sidewall, and continue to move on. Alright, as you can see here, we are done, good to go, ready to roll. So it's going to have a nice mid to low pocket, really solid channel with this. You can kind of see it coming up there as the ball's just getting hugged by either side there. And as I mentioned, like the triple up here down the sidewall, it really allows it to spread out that whole stack up. So you're not going to have issues with the mesh poking in or catching the ball or anything like that. And I really like it that way because of that added bonus to it. You also notice that I only did one shooter up top, helped keep it that 2013 specs. And I actually just went out and had practice with our high school team and threw around with it, and it threw beautifully. I actually, as you'll see here, made the switch on the other stick as well to that one shooting string. Really enjoy that. But anyways, this is my setup. So feel free to comment below, ask any questions, criticize away. I'm all ready for it. I'd be willing to help anyone who's interested in stringing this or getting something similar to this. Thanks for watching, and check out laxallstars.com.